What's up, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Seams, where we bring hitters and pitchers together so we can talk about the game and grow together. You're going to love this episode. Let's get going. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Seams, where we bring hitters and pitchers together so we can just talk about the game and grow as players. Back again, we got our boy Tod Nissle, like missile, so I didn't screw it up this time. We are good. Man, really excited about this conversation. Just really cool quality coming at you. As always, we got John Huizinga with us. The shirt today is on point. Johnny boy, go ahead, show us the shirt.
Oh,
Love it.
who that water who now?
Yeah, love it. So for those of y'all that are on the audio, it is a Bigfoot riding a polar bear, and it's one of the coolest artistic things I've seen. So it's phenomenal. So got him with us, and again, we got joining us for part two. We got Tod Nissle. Guys, just quality, ask great questions, and just as a great mind within the player development space and catching space and hitting space and all the spaces within what we're doing and all the stuff, man. So Tod, man, thanks for coming back and doing a part two with us. I know we're pumped about it. And Tod actually was going to kick us off. He's got a really cool concept that he wanted to kind of discuss and go through. I think y'all are going to enjoy it. So, Tod, welcome, man. Get everybody a little bit of bio if they haven't hit part one up. Give a little bit of bio, and then let's dive right in.
Oh, now part two. My name is Tod Nissle. I'm the catching coordinator for Impact Training in the Midwest Rebels. I played baseball through my high school and college career. My last year of college, I found kinesiology, and that led me down the strength and speed department. And training and baseball kind of go hand in hand. So I do catching and some hitting. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I did have a question for you guys, though.
Shoot.
So the Midwest Rebels are a travel ball organization. And coming from Fuel Factory was a training facility. There is a stark contrast because sometimes the goals are different, right? Like, I don't think anybody wants to travel 4 hours to a different state and stay in a hotel and go 0-4 on the weekend and go back home. So winning and travel ball kind of go hand in hand, winning and competing. Well, in a training facility, there is a time to compete, and I think you have to learn to compete. But I think being open to ideas and trying new things is a great thing under a training banner and a training facility. But when you're through 4 hours one way, trying new things isn't exactly a great strategy to take home a trophy on the weekend. So I was kind of curious, do you think there is a time or a place to train and to compete, and then there's a time to win? Do you think like you're continually like there is no off season for training, we're always getting there? Or do you think, hey, we train during this time, and then for the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, next season, all we're focused on is winning? Do you think there's a difference? Do you think there's a time to switch them off, or do you think they're interconnected? What do you think?
It's a great question. John, what do you think?
I would say in a way they definitely are all interlaced and interconnected, because I think if whether I'm in the training facility, I'm in the cage, or I'm on the field, I think the objectives should be similar. Now, obviously, like you're talking about time for experimentation and getting in the cage, having guys do golf wiffle balls and stuff like that, where the competition's still competition, but it's a little bit different than game strategy per se.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, as much as we can make practice harder than the game, I think that's where it's at for me. Like, especially when it comes to pitchers, it's like we know the average pitch in the big leagues last year missed its spot by 15 inches. And these kids, they missed by way even more than that, right? And I think when it comes to even aiming small, missing small, but understanding that, okay, you're going to miss, but you're going to act like you threw it there on purpose. That's the part of, like, let's say throwing in the pitching tunnel, right? When we're doing that. And the idea is wherever the ball goes, you're going to act like you threw it there on purpose. but you're going to also understand that, hey, there's this grouping that happens, almost like when you shoot archery, right? Where it's like good tight groups versus big misfires. So I think it's teaching them hit or miss, which to me, if you learn hit or miss, that becomes the same thing in the game. Where in the game, it's each pitch is a new game, and we want to win every pitch. Now, does that mean we're going to win every pitch? No, this is baseball, right? There's going to be pitches that we win and pitches that we lose, but we're going to always go into it with the mentality of win the pitch. And I think for someone in Arizona, it's a lot easier to say because we have the field and everything where it's like we can be outside year round, right? I think the training facility especially is big in areas where you can't be indoors and outdoors all year round, when there's snow on the ground or whatever's going on. So I think, interlacing the training and the game stuff is what I would say. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is twofold. First would be, I think people that are in the private sector love the training, getting in the weeds, solving problems, having light bulb moments, all of those things. And I think that's why you're going to get very coach minded, teacher minded people in the private sector, at least those that are going to last. You got to have some. I think my experience has been people that are very successful private sector coaches are very motivated by, I want people to have what I didn't have, or I want to be the coach that I didn't have, or all of those types of things. And so I think you're going to run into a lot of people that are like that. And so the thing that we have to be careful of in the private sector is not just getting fixated on that, on the breakthrough, the training aspect, because I think, that's what's so cool about training is you don't ever have to stop ever, really, if you don't want to. And I think what can happen, especially people that are very process oriented, they get a high from the training. They get a high from, or they, in a negative sense, they will hide behind or hide in the training. That looks like something goes wrong in a game and they go to mechanics first and foremost. And, well, what's wrong with my swing? And I think that can be a good thing, but I also think it can be where people hide because they don't actually have to feel the stuff that's going on or feel the failure or feel whatever.
Or the adjustment, right?
Yes, exactly. And so I think why there isn't necessarily a great intersection between those is because a good thing of people like I said at the beginning, where they want to help and they want to be the coach that they weren't, we have to keep forefront of mind and be disciplined enough to where none of this matters if it doesn't show up in the game. So it's almost like segmenting it. I don't think this happens enough. Segmenting, hey, we're going to work here and work on this and work on this and work on whatever. And then we're going to make it as game-like as possible, right? Whether that's a competition or what, but just getting in the mindset to where this is for the game. This is for performance to elevate. This is for all these stuff is not just so you throw harder or you get more spin or you get more strikeouts. It's positioned in a way that it's like, this is how we get better in the game. And I think a lot of times people don't, not intentionally, right? But we don't do that enough in the private sector. And then there's this huge gap when they go and play and they don't know how to deal with the anxiety, that game, real healthy game anxiety, the nervousness, the pressure. It's not there as much. And I think, that's something that I think, in my opinion, professional athletes or people that have played professionally understand really well. They understand the pressure. A lot of guys didn't have to, the ones that were successful for a long time, they either, a small percentage of them learned how to deal with it, or that the other percentage just didn't ever have to think about it. They just knew how to deal with it, knew how to cope, knew how to keep things simple, whatever it was. And
Mhm.
so a lot of these people, whether it's a coach or a player, they don't know how to do that. And so it can't be, that part can't be theory based. And I think for a lot of times it is theory based because they don't know, right? Or they haven't. It's not even that you have to be at that level, but if you've experienced the pressure of fill in the blank, you know, this is how we put pressure in a seat in the stadium and not be intimidated by it, right? And so I think that's where there's a disconnect because they don't know when to shut the training part off, and they train so much now. Everybody's in once a week, twice a week, whatever it is,
Right.
and they just get in that training mode, and it's
Mhm.
not.
I feel like, I mean, you watch a pro guy though, right? You watch a big league game, guys train before the game,
Yes.
right? And they train after the game.
Yes.
And I feel like what you see with the high level is that they're always, you know, even in their probably regular life away from the field, they're competitive. They're super competitive, and they're very meticulous about the way they eat. A lot of them, you know, and they're dedicated to the process. And I think that the other thing to add to what you're saying is the adrenaline of the game. You'll never be able to simulate in training. And we can try, we can turn on music, we can scream, we can yell, we can do whatever, but the game creates that next level of competition or that environment that, to me, in training there's no way to simulate, you know. So I think that's part of this equation where it's like, you know, after coaching for 20 years, if I know that that element is never going to be simulated, then why would I continue to try to simulate it? It's like, no, I'm just going to make it practice. I'm going to make it harder. Where it's like in a game, yeah, you get to play the game, but it's like, I'm going to make you see if you can hit something, you know, the size of my fist.
Yeah.
Versus, we know in a game, you could throw something in the side of this and get somebody if you act like you did it on purpose.
Right.
So I think that's where it's like, hey, I can kind of tweak with the elements, but the one thing that, you know, the adrenaline is this a big separator with, I think, what you're talking about, and I think with what Todd's talking about, where it's like the adrenaline that kicks in. Can you go this way, or are you gonna go this way?
Right.
Whatever that looks.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy that the average miss was 15 inches, considering the plate 17. That is.
Yeah, it was up 2 inches from the previous year, which was 13.
Do you think that's because of velo? People
yeah, there's this big debate, you know what I mean, right now between it. It's like, to me, guys have always thrown hard. You know,
Yeah.
I've played, you know, shoot, I'm 44 years old now, so I guess, you know, but it's like I've seen a lot of guys that threw hard. Now, is there some guys that are throwing harder? Maybe, but are they competitive pitches that are deceptive and does it look like it's going to get there when it gets there, or does it have some element of surprise to it, or some action, or because the good hitters I know could care less about velo. I know guys that step in, they move closer to the machine to try to get it to be faster because all they got to do is go whack.
Velo. Yep. Did you see what the Nationals put up in their bullpen?
Yeah.
I don't care how hard you throw a ball for.
I think too, there's an element of, you know, when you're even with what you're talking about here with training and games, where it's like, if I only train and the only thing I'm going for is this velo and this velo program, and then all of a sudden I go into game and now it's time to get somebody out.
Yeah,
that's where there could definitely be a disconnect. Now, is there time and place for things? Absolutely, there's time and place for things. But I think when it comes down to, at the end of the day, you defined it as winning earlier, right? And I think that's what it is winning the pitch, you know, and playing the game one pitch at a time is ultimately the goal for my guys, you know, and to make them their own best coach, both in practice, but also in the game. And that means asking them questions in the training, not just telling them what they're doing or not doing. And then I think in the game, it means you have to let them play. It's not time to be puppet master. And I think that's what I think we see a lot in amateur, whatever you want to call it, club ball or whatever you want to label it as.
Managing.
But it's like the puppet master kind of coaching instead of like, hey, Part of the issue is that they don't practice enough, and then they just play, and that's there's always going to be that scale, but I think, to me, it's always practice more than you play, but that doesn't mean that you have this switch to me that goes on and off.
Mm. What's interesting is you talked about adrenaline dumps, and I got into competitive pistol shooting not too long ago. And one of the things that they love to talk about is like, this is why you have to compete. And in the baseball side, we always have to remember, like in training, everyone there wants you to succeed. As soon as you go play a game, half the field, half of everyone there wants you to fail because they're playing for the other team. And what they found in the shooting side was the adrenaline difference. So if you can shoot let's just say a 3-inch group, when you're actually under stress and you have to do this or you're not going to be able to do it anymore, that group almost doubles. So if you can shoot very comfortably in training, like a 3-inch group, under stress, it can balloon out to 6. Doesn't mean it will, no, but usually in high stress situations, that's what happens. So I think the more often that you can compete, and that, like in catchings, we try and create chaos because it's not just a machine, right? Like, yeah, you have to handle a ball from a pitcher who knows where they're at or what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But you have to handle base runners. You have to handle what's next. You have to handle your coaches. You have to handle the hitter. You have to handle the umpire. There's so much happening. And if I can introduce chaos, it allows your brain to get comfortable overloading. And then you get better at making decisions or setting up prerequisites. Like for catchers, I want you to win up. So I need you to win the bottom. So basically, like, I'll have them set up, and if it's below their glove, great, you can block it. If it's at your glove or above, you're going to catch it, which that's what you're going to do. Like, that's your job, is to catch. So blocking's reaction, throwing is reacting. And basically in those situations, your setup and your leverages will help you with those reactions. But step number 1, the thought process is already done, but you're setting up based on what you're trying to execute, then whatever's going to allow you to contain your miss. And I think the more chaos that I can introduce, once they've obviously learned the basics and mechanics, figure out how they move the best. Like, I love to define mechanics as, how do you move efficiently? How do you move efficiently and consistently? Those are your mechanics, because everyone, 2 arms, 2 legs, but we all move different. So once I can do that, then I can actually start working on the game, which is your mind. And your mind, the guys work differently, but once I can get you to problem solve, and then I can throw different problems at you when you're not ready for them, aka chaos, that is when we can start to be like, really separate ourselves from just physically gifted athletes to guys that can problem solve and become a coach for another player, aka their pitcher, or just help being on the field and dictating what's going to happen.
Yeah, I would call that anticipation, right? Because it's the thing where, and I think it's where myself, I'm really good when I get lists, very good when I have objectives that I'm looking to check off. Yeah. And I think it's why a lot of times baseball guys that last for a long time have routines, because if you know what your routine is when you get there, and you can almost like be in default mode to just check that stuff off. Yeah. But then it prepares you for the other side, which is what you're talking about, which is, I call it chaos theory, because I think you have to have chaos theory in training too, where it's like, yes, you have to have your things that are, these are my, this is what I do. But then there has to be chaos, because your body will automatically kind of go into easy mode, right. And I think there's time and place for both, and there are, I think, especially in season, there's days for starters that there should be things that are just like, hey, this is what I always do. But then also, if that's all you do, I think you're going to cut yourself short versus like having a day where there's a little more chaos. There's a little more, hey, I'm still doing the same moves. I'm still doing the same movements in the weight room, but I'm going to mix up the order, and I'm going to do something for time, distance, or reps, but I'm going to mix up the variables so that there's something going on that's making me have to be ready for the only constant, which is change. And I think that's where, with what you're talking about, is like, okay, we teach these anticipations. This is where training comes in, right? And then we let them play the game. We let them fail, because a lot of times guys only hear things when they're ready to hear it, right? Where it's like, you could give a 12-year-old the best nugget, a whole group, you got a whole group of, you give just the best nugget ever. And realistically, probably a handful of them is going to stick with them, right? Versus like, if you give them, let's say you have the same concept, but you have 5 different ways to say it, then maybe you're pounding that thing home from some different angles and something that like actually relates. Because otherwise they need to fail or struggle to say, hey, I'm ready to listen to something.
Yeah.
And that's a fine line too, right? We talk about that all the time, where it's like, hey, I want you to have the confidence of the champion, but I want you to train like you're the contender. And it's like, there's a difference between the humble and the hungry, and, you know, the confidence versus the cocky. I mean, there's all these little things that they got to learn, that they're all intangibles, you know?
Yeah.
That's really good.
But they matter.
They do. And I think that's where, like, on the training side, right, how it's, you know, like what Todd was talking about, like, when does the switch go off? How, you know, how do we equate this to winning? How do we, you know, how do we get it to show up? All the stuff that he had mentioned with that. I think, like, what's important is that what a lot of what we three do, and, you know, even people in our circle, is very, you know, it's centered around that. The game, produce, troubleshoot, struggle, because I know what you're going to face. I know the end from the beginning, right? That's the definition of vision. And, but I think that's not the case most of the time. It's, how's my swing feel? How's this feel? How's this feel? And I don't know if it's a lack of ability with, you know, coaches, or they don't know, or, you know, they're insecure, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But so, like, it's always got to be focused on the game, right? From the hitting side of it, it's like, okay, if I have a person that came in and it's like, hey, I went 0 for 4 with 4 punchies. If you want to work on some efficiency, like, let's do it. But we need to work on you losing the pitch that's getting you in the 2-strike count, that's then making your average go down and the strikeout probability go up, because you don't have confidence, you don't have whatever it is. So what we need to hammer on is, you know, we got to work this 2-1 count, or we got to work this 1-0 count, or we got to put ourselves in situations to where, like, they're prepared. And then that's the whole reason we train, right? Is so the brain will be quiet and we can just compete. But I don't think people either know how to do that, know what that takes, know what that means. I genuinely don't know. But that's the whole reason we train, is not to look better, look prettier, throw harder. All those things are going to come as products, as byproducts of what we are doing. That is what's going to come. However, if we are not, it's not working towards the game, that's all that matters. That's, and it's like the failure, the struggle is okay. And it's okay to be able to look at it in the mirror and be like, I messed up. I wasn't good enough today. That's cool. Now it's going to drive me to that. I don't think people experience that, because it's like, well, my hands were dropping, so that's why I didn't have success. It's like, no, you got beat. That guy was better than you. Yeah. And, like, it's all good.
Yeah, there's
like,
a deeper level of what happened, right? It's layered.
Yeah.
What you're talking about.
Yeah. And, like, I think people don't, whether people just operate on the surface too level, or on the surface level too much, or they don't know. But at some point, it's like, man, you got to, like, remember what it was like to play and how frustrating it was. Like, you're either thinking about mechanics and you look like a robot, or you don't know what's going wrong and you're frustrated. So then at that point, like, how strong is your fight? How strong is your response? Because you can train response, right? You can't always, like, know exactly what the reaction is going to be, but we can know what the reaction to the reaction is going to be. And we can train that. And instead of poor, pitiful me, like, I talk to my kids about that all the time too. It's like, hey, look, like we ain't doing that. This is
Right.
not like, hey, this happened to me, or it's like, no, like you can control screaming. You can
Right.
control that. You can be pissed. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm okay with that. You're sad, like whatever, right? Whatever it is, like I'm good with it. But now your response is not okay to sit on the ground and scream. Like, that's not going to be okay. It's never going to be okay. So we can train
Right.
that response. But I think too oftentimes it's about, the swing or do it my way or we train different or, whatever. People are just too busy flapping their jaws when in reality, it's like, have you like stopped and asked that kid whether actually, hey, where are you screwing up in the game? It's all good. That's my job is to help you stop doing that. And I don't think
Right.
people necessarily know how to posture that, right? And so then it doesn't translate. And then you drive 4 hours and you go 0 for 4 because you don't have people that know how to. We can't necessarily rely as coaches or mentors or teachers. We can't necessarily rely on young people to know how to do that especially if they're not given the freedom to learn how to do that in the game.
Right.
And I think like that's something that's important to keep front of mind, right? And people just don't do that because it's
Right.
metric driven or it's, old school driven or I hate this or we're gonna do this. And it's like all I hear in that is I. That's all I hear
Yeah.
in reality. And the problem is you ain't there. They're in the game, they're by themselves, even if they give a cue, right? Like I was talking to a guy, and he was like, well, what cue should I give my kid? I was like, smile. And
Yeah.
clap your hands. Like
Yeah.
that's what it should be. Hey,
Yeah.
come on, baby. Love you. Come on. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
He doesn't need you to be his coach. He needs you to be his dad. Right. So like the same kind of thing is just like everything's got to be like, great. Hey, we're going to do this work. We're going to do all these things. And then what are you struggling with in the game? When you shit the bed, what does it look like? What does it smell like? How does it happen? When did that like, okay, great. Now let's attack those. Cause I think at that point the player becomes okay with like something that went wrong. And it's not like, oh, I'm exposed. Like, oh, this feels weird. This is hard. It's like, no, it's all good. This is my fault.
Yeah.
This is my fault.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm the coach. I'm supposed to be helping you with that. I'm not helping you with that. I'm asking so I know. But then at that point, they can kind of like own it. And it's like, oh, it's actually isn't that big of a deal, especially when I get to work on it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think like it doesn't happen enough. And so they get to the game. They're like, oh, I did everything I was supposed to do. I thought about my cue. And I was like, okay, well, what was the third pitch of your second at bat? I don't know. It's like, well, I can't help you then. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, oh, we're going to do these 4 drills and make your swing better. No, you swung at bad pitches and you weren't on times. Let's start there. Right. So I think, it's just a posturing, right? I think that's where the gap is between the private and the field. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's a whole, like, and I don't love most on field guys as far as like some guys that are in high school that are, have said the same thing since 1973. Like, I don't love listening to them, but I can listen to their struggle, right? We're like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's showing up. This is how this. Okay, we can attack that. I can incorporate that into my training. I can incorporate that into the stuff that we're talking about. And yeah, we can start hitting on that. If that's what they're seeing, whether their perception is right or not, I don't care. It's not about right or wrong at that point. It's about, okay, their perception comes from this. They think this way. They think, oh, okay, that makes some sense. Maybe we should do this. I need to teach this kid how to, walk through this and then do it on their own. Like, hey, don't be a wuss. Like, we talked about this and try this in BP. If he gets on you, this is how you respond. This is how we do this. This is how we do this. And not in a do these things, but it's like from a conceptual standpoint. So now we planted the seed and you let the tree grow. You water the trees. Zeke talks about all the time, right? It's seeds and cultivate the seed, not climb the ladder to do it exactly how I said. It's plant the seed and let the tree grow. And I think that's all it is, right? Is like once we do that, then they've got a stem to work from, right? They don't know how to do the roots. They don't know how to do the planting. Eventually, we want them to plant. I don't even want to have to give them the seed. I want them to plant. And I want them to do this. And I want them to do that. And eventually, you want it to be like, hey, like my stem is colored blue. I'm not sure why, because I did all these things this way. What is your perspective on it? It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like here's what I see. Here's what I whatever. That's what it should be. but like just don't think it's postured that way enough, right? And I think like we all try to do that, but I think like it's just something that I don't think people do, especially like in your situation, right? Where it's just there's a lot of different moving pieces and there's a lot of, you know, people that have an agenda or people think that it's needs to be this way or needs to be that way. And it's like in reality, it doesn't need to be any of those ways.
Right.
We got to win the game. We got to score more runs than the other person. Bottom line,
Right.
right? We got to do a little like, and so like I think that's where it's kind of hard and then lost, and it's the human element which is difficult. But I think like the posturing of okay, when you miss this ball or you misread this ball behind the dish or you're slow, what happened? Right? Look at yourself first, pick up a mirror, always look at yourself. And then it's like, then maybe after the game, it's like, okay, my pitcher is so daggum slow and this is so frustrating. Like, hey man, like I see this is really hard, but they don't know how to have those conversations. Right? Because like confrontation to these younger kids is going back and forth with people on comments in the comment section. Right? That's confrontation. When in reality, it's like, hey man, that was effed up and I'm not okay with it. So like, why the hell did you do that? That's confrontation, right? That's what it's going to be in the game, right? Like, what is going on? Like, talk to me about what's going on. Or, I mean, I don't think I would ever have to come at someone like Jon like that, but it'd be like, hey man, like, what are you feeling? Where am I messing up? What feels better today? Like you said this when we started, but now it's kind of moved to this. Like, what do you think? Like, but it's like, that's why catchers a lot of times are really great coaches because we got to juggle a lot, you know? And so like, I think that's where, it's just like how we posture as coaches and mentors. That's all we are. We're just a mentor. Like,
well, I remember asking.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize, brother. I remember I've had a lot of conversations recently asking younger athletes when they say like, "Oh, I did this," or meaning like when I threw the ball too fast or bounced it or something like that. I asked them, "Have you ever had the opportunity to hang around an older, like accomplished athlete, like a D1 or a pro guy or anything like that?" And they go, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. I'm like, you ever notice that they never blame anybody else? And all of a sudden you start to see the wheels start turning. And the ones that have never had the opportunity, I'm like, well, I've had the opportunity to hang around some really high level guys that perform really well. And they never, ever blame anybody else. I was like, do you know why that is? Because taking ownership of it kind of sucks. It's not fun. I was like, but do you know why they do it? They all of a sudden they'll start being like, oh, wait, I do remember this, but no, why? Why do they do it? I was like, because it's control. You didn't beat me with an inside fastball. I was late. Because if Jon can always beat me with an inside fastball, next time he's going to hit me. If Jon can always beat me with an inside fastball, what's the point of me playing? Because all Jon has to do is throw an inside fastball, then I lose. But if I can make adjustments and then I can win. And I was like, it doesn't mean that like I'm ever going to hit Jon's inside making firewood fastball. I'm never like, but what it does is it gives me that option, the opportunity to continue to get better and make adjustments in the game. I was like, that is one of the biggest reasons that you'll ever hear. Because if it's just I'm a victim of Jon's inside fastball breaking my bat every time, well, then you're never going to advance. That's where your career is going to end athletically, or at least as a hitter. So you have to take ownership of it. Control.
Yeah, I think that's great. What were you going to say, Jon? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I love it. I feel like that's the whole idea of making them their own best coach in the first place. Yeah. That is ownership. You know, if we hold their hand through this whole process and expect that we're going to hold their hand during the game and we're going to control this and we're going to control that, it's
like, nope.
Like, how does that work, right? It's like we talked about it, I think, last time, but I always say it's like driving, right? You have to somebody has to get out of the driver's seat and you have to drive the car. And then eventually somebody has to be out of the car and you're driving the car by yourself. And I think a lot of times getting back to what we started talking about, but it's like practice, games. And it's like making it where practice gets us ready for games and training gets us ready for games, and the objectives are all there. But then once we are in the game, we play. And I think that's where I think what you were talking about with the screaming and the yelling. I mean, I've definitely played for some coaches that were screamers and yellers, and there were definitely guys that were affected by it and guys that were not affected by it. And I think that that's something that kind of comes into play when it's getting to know your guys, right? Like half your guys need a kick in the butt, and half of them need a pat on the back. They all need their tires pumped, but they all different things motivate different guys. So I think that when we keep that in mind, it's like, okay, there's no perfect in this thing, right? This baseball thing, there's no perfect, but it's like, okay, every day as a coach, I'm looking to get one day better, just like I teach my guys. So it's like, hey, if I see for this particular group, something's not going the way we want it to go, or hey, I've looked to troubleshoot it this way, and okay, that failed. Okay, well, let's try this. And I think that that's where, as a coach, you just got to stay open-minded, open-hearted. And if you can make adjustments, guess what? Your guys will learn how to make adjustments, right? There's a lot of different things that go with that.
Yeah, I love that.
So the first thing, and I'm not going to say any names. When I see someone yelling, when I see a coach yelling, immediately, I immediately, like, my first thing is I start losing respect for it. So I got yelled at in my entire career, and a lot of people, when you first start having these conversations, be like, "Well, this generation is just soft. This generation is that." And then I go, "Okay, so do you still agree it's okay to yell at people and not teach them anything?" And they never think of that. They just think, "Well, he's yelling. He's got to be coaching." So then I tell them the story. I sent my team to state once. I hit a bomb over the batter's eye. Bomb. Like, this is gone. Come around. I get told, and I'll never forget this. I get told, it's about damn time you did what I told you to do. Now go sit the F down. Didn't shake my hand or anything. That was like my career. And because all he did was yell. Actually, I got a fungo thrown at me once. So it was like, you could do everything right. You could do whatever. He would just point out what you did wrong. But the absence of coaching. So I think, especially from my experience, and the first thing was reading Wooden's book and seeing how Wooden coached. I'm not going to say that it made me that way, but it definitely influenced where, like, there's a time to yell. Like, I've seen guys fire bats in the dugout and angry Tod comes out. But before, like, that, to me, it's one of the last things, because I can get intensity is always there. But if you're always intense, are you really intense? I don't know. To me, it just starts losing its effectiveness.
I'm with that. Yeah.
I think that's wise, right? I think it's very wise. And I think it's just like anything else, right? The more times that it's used every time, it loses its potency, right? Which I think is exactly what you're saying. And so it's just, there's a time, right? There's a time where it's like, hey, like, I've been trying everything. Like, I've been trying this, giving leash, get taken advantage of, like, all this stuff. And it's like, all right, you're going to hear it now. And you're going to get it. You're going to get it straight, right? There's no buffer. There's, like, you're getting it. But I think, like, if it's like that all the time, then it's just, people just tune you out one way or the other, right? If it's soft, if it's coddling, if it's the other, right? It becomes the same thing. We're seeing what coddling for a long period of time is doing, right? But then, like, we've also seen on the other end. So it's like, now, like, can we be disciplined enough to stop being extremed with it and not stop having a reaction and relax and just kind of operate in the middle? But I think a lot of that comes down to the personal side of it, right? Like, me, you, John, can't even fathom not doing that, because it's like who we are to the core. Well, realistically, like, people aren't. They haven't done the work. They haven't done the, like, it's funny. People would think, like, with John, right? He's the most laid back person in the world. He never gets mad. He never this. And the cool part is, like, when you hear the stories, it doesn't change that. When you hear the things that he's overcome and, like, dealt with, and ask the question, why am I like this? Why do I do this? That people will be shocked. They shouldn't be, because he's done the work where it's like, hey man, like I'm not okay with how angry I was at this point. Why? Why am I so this? Why am I so that? And like, I don't think people do that. I love like anytime Jon, like when we hang out, a lot of times like he'll tell a story or this or that, and I'm just listening because I think it's so cool to hear the process and hear like how like he's gone through this and battled this and like whatever, like, and I think that's the difference, because so many people don't, or they get comfortable. I don't even think it's intentional, right? But like becoming lazy isn't something that people do on purpose. Some do, but most don't. It's just easy. It just slips into that. And when I raise my voice with my girls, they will listen to me. They will, when my coach voice comes on, they listen and do what I say.
Right.
So the battle is, I can do that, and they'll do what I say every time I do it.
Right.
But just because I can doesn't mean I should. Just because I can, my coach, like my coach voice comes out, like everybody hears me. Like everybody hears me.
Yeah.
But like I don't get to do that. And I don't think that people necessarily have two-sided to that, right? They're like, hey, I can do it, and they're not doing it, so I'm going to make them do it. And it's like, I get it, but at the same point, it's just crippling, I think, right? And it's crippling for everybody, because you're circulating the same thing, and you're getting results you want, but then you got to do it again in 2 days. And I mean, who really wants to have a bat thrown at them, or you hit a home run and that kind of stuff, right? It's just, that's 100% about the person that's in the mentor position. It's like, you're just an asshole. Like, love you. I hope you can get away from it and get into it, but you're an ass. So like, the respect is not there, because listen, in my opinion, like even if you're an asshole and you mess up, okay, it happens all the time, happens every day. If you have the courage, the balls to freaking come back and say, hey, I messed up, I'm in. And that is a very foreign concept, right? But it's like people do not realize. I was talking with a guy about this yesterday, and he goes, dude, kids, you will get the ultimate respect. The kids will literally do whatever you say if you go to them and say, hey, I taught you something, or we went over this and that was wrong. That's on me. Like, that is so true. Like, I've experienced that myself. I've watched it happen. It's like, hey, are people going to do it? Probably not. But I think in reality, you look at it and it's just like, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to do that. And because of that, we get those results, or we think this way. And I don't think a lot of people do. And so we're going to continue having those issues. We're going to continue to have those gaps, and they're just going to find something else to blame, right? Now it's the kids. And it's funny, you look at it and it's like, okay, that's fair. Your generation raised them. So who's that on? Is it on the kid, or is that on the people that raised them? In a sense, right? There's always responsibility, that 100%. But like, they didn't know any better too. You did.
Right.
So if there's something wrong with them, you don't like something, you kind of played a part in it. So where's the mirror? Grab the mirror, right? Grab the mirror. And I don't think people are willing to do that is the bottom line, right? And I think like that's where there's just gaps. And so there's gaps, right? And all we have to do is look at the gap and start asking the why question. Why are they there? Where it's constant.
Right.
Now there's a huge gap between, performance in the cage and performance in the game. Why? Got to ask these questions. And, you may not like it. You may not like hearing a big leaguer, big league hitter, ex-big league hitter talking about swinging down, or I did this and this was wrong. But it's like, okay, don't just hear what they're saying. Hear the concept. You don't have to agree with what they're saying. You can think the person's a complete idiot. But if there's a concept that's like, hey, that's worth like kind of thinking about. Just take the concept. It's not about the information. Information's cheap. It is now. Didn't used to be, but it is. It's cheap. Don't mean anything. The concept is the concept worth taking, not the cue, right? A cue is just a concept wrapped up in a kid's language or a player's language. That's it. Yeah. Right. So if I give a cue, it's my cue. It's my language. It's my thought process, instead of, hey, stop looking at me. You're going to have to swing to find this shit and see what it feels like. Come on. Like, come on. And that just doesn't happen. I've been around too many facilities, too many organizations, too many whatever. It just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. And that, but we see the gap, and then we don't listen to people, different perspectives, or the players, or hey, what would you change? What would this? What would this? We don't ask those questions. What am I doing wrong? We don't ask those questions because we're afraid to hear the answer. When in reality, it's like it ain't that big of a deal. Like you screw up, so like, why are you pretending like you don't? I'm fine with it.
Right.
I'm fine. The more you hear it, the more you can be like, yeah, that's right. The easier it becomes. It's so easy. The first couple of times it freaking sucks ass, but like after that, it's like, okay, yeah, that's fair. Makes sense to me, And I think that's a huge gap. Going back to what you were saying, right? Like that's the gap. They don't know how to flip the switch on. Whose fault is that? I don't know. It's not all the fault, right? But you think about MLB The Show, if they time the two button presses right, they throw a perfect strike. So now, if they do the mechanics right, if they do the setup right, it equals outs. That's the basic level that the brain operates at. If I do this right, if I do this well, I get outs or I get hits. And we haven't pushed the brain to have a bigger understanding of that. And that's on us. That's where the gap is, right? That's where they don't know how to flip the switch on. It's like, well, I just got to do my swing right. It's like, dude, nobody gives a shit about your swing. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about that. It does, but it doesn't. Because like bottom line is round ball, round bat, you got to hit it. Come on. Bottom line. And like, I don't think people posture it that way, right? And I think that's where like, guys like us struggle with understanding how people could miss that. You know what I mean? And I think that's a hard thing with that for sure. So I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of people get upset, like as coaches, and they're kind of upset where they ended up. But if you don't like where the car is parked, who's driving it? And I think you're, as a coach, like I think we talked about this a little bit last time as well. Like you set the tone, like you set the influence, you set everything. It all starts with you. It's kind of why like you get the big bucks, quote unquote.
Oh yeah.
If you can't, like, especially like if you're there as a coach, and I get guys that step up because no one else would, but if you're there because you had the experience and you've been there, and then you get upset that an 11-year-old can't turn a double play, I think that's more on you. And when we start looking at performance style stuff, I think guys just like it's a losing thing because baseball, unless you're a successful pitcher, is a game of failure, right? A successful pitcher is the exception to it. I think where I found, especially looking at hindsight being 2020 and me being able to put it into practice, whether it be MSBL, whether it be disc golf or any chance you get to compete, I find that if I train and then I put myself in a headspace where I get to play, I get to have fun, I get to enjoy that, it takes the stress away and I get more into my subconscious and I'm more flow state, be a great way to explain it. And I find that performance ends up taking care of itself and my shortcomings end up exposing where I lacked in my training or my prep for that event, whatever it could be.
I love that. I think that's spot on. And I don't think we understand how far reaching competing actually is.
Yeah.
And like, I think we try and do it all in the sector of, practice or training or on the field or all the stuff. But what it comes down to is like, you can't artificially make that want to for somebody. You just can't do it. And
No.
if anything, right, if there's growth for anything, growth opportunity for anything, it's trying to invoke more of that naturally, right? Or like just finding what that is for a player, right? Like, I mean, maybe it's, playing Call of Duty or Apex or MLB The Show or whatever it is. It's like, why do you get so mad when you lose at that? Okay.
Right.
And then building off of that, right? But I don't think people can rightly fathom how important that is. Just even in the small stuff, man. Like I can't play card games with most people because I just freaking there's a switch and it's ugly.
Yep.
Like it's ugly, man. Like, it's
Been
not
there.
good.
I'm joking.
It's not good, right? And so I got to learn how to turn that switch off better, right? That's on me. But it was funny. Like one of our friends, they love playing like Catan and like all their other old people games, I guess. And like, so like I love Catan, right? I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but like, she was like, "Oh, we want to play." I was like, "You better be ready to buckle up if you want to actually play, because like
Oh,
I'm gonna
no.
play, I'm gonna play." And like, I think that where that came from was lots of things, right? But it's like I got pummeled. I played against everybody in my neighborhood was like 3 years older than me. I just got pummeled
Yeah.
every time we played anything. Like I'd hit a home run and get freaking domed up by the tennis ball, right? The next thing, like it's just that's just how it was, And
Yeah.
like, or we played. I got my first concussion in the front yard. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just there's a difference to that I think like that's what we want and that's what we need, and we can't be responsible for all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
playing in a game that becomes a job for a child is not going to artificially create that, right? Like
No.
there's something to just like, listen, you mofo, like you're done. You're done because I'm playing. You're done. And
Right.
there's something to that, right? I was talking to a guy last night and I said, dude, do you understand that when you're a dog on the mound, it looks harder to the hitter? It
Yeah.
absolutely looks harder. If they're a freaking just that's why I never would have ever wanted to face Jon. I would have. And honestly, I would have got him some. He'd have got me a lot more than I got him, but I'd have got him some. But like he's freaking staring us all. He's literally staring. I'm gonna like I'm not gonna back down from anybody. And like he would stare a hole through me. And it's like it physically looks harder when you're a dog. It 100%
I think
does.
it comes with sound effects too that way.
I love it. Boom.
Yeah, I was going to say. Laces passing by your head. Yeah.
Yep. The closer it gets, the louder it gets.
Yeah. There's just something to that, There's just something to like being a dog. I mean, because essentially this kid was coming off injury and he wasn't where he wanted to be velocity wise. And I was like, dude, look, you bring your freaking 83 with everything you got and just freaking stare down the glove. And I don't want that. I don't want him to have the ball back as a hitter. Like it doesn't. Velocity plays, but being a dog plays too, man. It just absolutely plays. And that's where I think it's hard, right? Because they just haven't competed the same way. And so, if anything, it's just like finding how each person is motivated by competition and then freaking pouring into that and just pushing on that. And hey, man, that guy was talking shit. He was saying he's going to freaking take your spot. Like, I don't know. You going to let him? Like, and just you're almost playing devil's advocate, right? You're kind of the little agitation, but it's like you just have to invoke it a little bit more. Before it was just there. Now it's just not as much, right? So we can either cry about it or try shit and like get weird, right? Like not really weird, but just like, hey, if you need to stand on your head before you get up there, do it, right? Like I don't care, right? And I think it's just one of those things that I think is super important, but super overlooked at the same point.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly, and being able to compete, get up there. I mean, I love telling the story about Matty Broderick. He was a pitcher at Glendale. He was about 5'8". Forgive me, Matty, if I'm missing an inch. But he was a little lefty. He topped out at about 72, 73 miles an hour. And he had 3 pitches that went 3 different ways. And he always came in and probably 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe even closed. After we had a lot of tall righties that just threw hard. And Matty would come in and doop, and thanks, good game. And we're out there on the mound. And he would get up there, didn't care. Here it is, boys. You're not going to hit it. Thanks for the ground ball. Appreciate you. And that was it. And it wasn't like Matty never, ever. Like Matty knew what he was and he knew how to compete. He never, ever got upset that he wasn't throwing 97 miles an hour. I mean, even in the grand scheme of things, the way I have to explain to my catchers, because when somebody throws hard, it's awesome to look at. It's awesome to listen to. It's fun to see. But velo is a tool, and velocity exposes inefficiencies. It literally just decreases the amount of decisions you can make. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but like a lot of, even John was saying, even the greatest hitters he knows don't care about velo. I don't care. Go for it. And part of the reason that I do the velo drills with my catchers is once you get your eyes and your frames per second that you're seeing, everything slows down. Everything slows down. And it's still quick, and it's still guys, get 99 miles an hour blowing past them every night. But that's also because they have to deal with off-speed pitches. They also have to deal with locations. That's also they have to deal with real pressure. And I think when you get down to it, and I honestly think, I wanted a very raw opinion from you guys, of course, but I think that switch, I think the guys that are successful continue to get better. And I think continuing to get better is on the field, which is competing, and that mentality is off the field where you're trying new things and you're learning, you're a student. And I think when you can continue to do those things, because every single coach goes, man, if I knew what I know now, well, that means that you should have been learning more. That means that we should have been in the classroom. You should have been able to do this. I think if you can continually learn and be able to adapt and be able to deal with all the mental stuff, I think that in the end is the goal. The hardest part is trying to piece it all together while you're growing as a human being. While we all come from different backgrounds. I mean, heck, some of us, IMG Academy. And then, oh my God, I can't. Well, who's the catcher over there, and he's moving tires in the rain in the mud on social media. We all come from different backgrounds, right? But if you can figure out how to make that work and play your hand the best you can, I don't care how far you go. That's success. Like, that's what you can't control. You can't control, like, I don't know. I guess a great thought experiment for a young player, like in high school, where they start to understand winning, like they start to hate losing more than they like winning type of deal, would be, which one's worse? You going 4 for 4 and losing, or going 0 for 4 and winning? Which one's worse for you? And I think that'll give you a great starting point, at least for the maturity and place that athlete is at. Game of individuals played as a team. I don't know. Good place to start, at least mentality-wise.
Yeah, I think, and that makes it tangible, right? That makes it doable, because I think a lot of times it's just people hear, again, it's the information, it's the addiction to information, where they hear this, okay, if I do that, then I'll have this. And it's like, reality is a lot of this stuff that we're talking about just gets you to buy into the longevity of what it takes. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's really what we need. We want, anything like that, right? And I think it's just, that's the whole thing of it, is trying to make it tangible, and like it's difficult, right? It's difficult to understand it, but the bottom line is, the way you understand it is you just freaking do it. And you gotta put yourself in a corner and take away the excuses and take away the things that'll give you passes, and just be done with it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's at least how, that's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen. That's what I've heard. That's what I've listened to, and it's just, that's what it comes down to. You got to put yourself in a corner. And if you don't, then you're never going to learn how you actually respond to things,
right.
Well,
winning doesn't care about your feelings, right?
No,
winning just cares about winning.
It doesn't. And the
especially in this game.
Yeah. The ability to feel and then still go is absolutely something that is acquired and learned how to do. Yeah. Hey, I'm pissed. Hey, I'm this. Hey, I'm this. This sucks. All the above. And then we went here. And then we moved forward. And then the ability to do both is the game changer. If there's a cheat code, it's that. Right? Like, to do the work do the invisible work.
Yeah.
And the invisible progress is made by invisible work, right? Like doing it, the invisible being stuff that people can't see. So, man, I love that. So good. Yeah, John, you need to run.
Yeah, these guys are starting to go, and they're about to turn on the music. So I think
that's what I'm thinking. No, that's good.
Back into the cleats, and I hear some contact. Yeah,
I love it. No, that's awesome.
It's party time, but what a
yeah, dude.
What a thing.
Ton, you're awesome, man. I appreciate you and just your heart for all that stuff and just the game and all of it, man. You're a gem, and I appreciate you letting us borrow some of your time and give it to other people. And you're awesome, man. And John, you're my guy. Love you, bro. Keep doing what
Love
you're
you.
doing. Yeah, man.
Oh, man.
Keep making the impact. So Todd, you're awesome, man, and y'all are awesome. I love getting to talk to y'all and be around you.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all. Have a good day. Thanks for breathing.
Thanks for breathing.
Keep doing it.
Oh, now.
That's good. All right,
See
y'all.
you, boy.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this. I hope you enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. If you're getting stuff out of this, man, shoot this to your friends, subscribe, throw us a like, throw us a comment so we know what you want to see, what you want to hear, and that it's helping you out, because our passion is to see the game grow, and we want to help you be able to reach your potential so success is made tangible for everything you do. See you on the next one.